My name is Ken Krause, and I'm the president of the Dallas-Fort Worth Professional Musicians Association. We are the musicians union for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We are part of the American Federation of Musicians, and our local number is Local 72-147. Our jurisdiction includes Dallas-Fort Worth. We're as far north as Lawton, Oklahoma, south to Waco, west to Abilene, and east to Tyler. I think the main reason for being a member of the Musicians Union is the power that you gain from collective action. You're a part of a collective of like-minded individuals who are seeking to, they're also professional musicians like yourself, and they're seeking to improve their livelihood, their standard of living in the workplace, both in terms of working conditions as well as wages. And that's primarily what we're all about, just like any other labor union. And we try our best to obtain collective bargaining agreements where possible. We have collective bargaining agreements with all of our area symphony orchestras. We also help smaller organizations or groups of musicians in obtaining contracts, individual contracts for their services, and in setting the area standards as far as wages and working conditions. Collective bargaining is where, again, we are a collective. We are, that's what a union is, and we're going in there for a particular group of our musicians. In most cases, it's what we have or with the various symphony orchestras. So let's take the Dallas Symphony, for example. That is a collection of individuals that numbers a little over 90 individuals who are members of that orchestra. And we bargain a contract for them with the Dallas Symphony Association, which is their management, and that provides for their wages and working conditions as they work for the Dallas Symphony, and they're members as members of the orchestra. And what that involves is, you know, somewhere back long ago, I mean, we've had a contract with them for a long time, but we were able to get them to agree to recognize the union as the musicians' representative for the purposes of negotiating a contract. And then we sit down, those of us who are officers of the union, the local in this case, along with a committee of musicians that are elected by their peers within the orchestra, that usually numbers about 5, and we sit down and negotiate an agreement with the management. Generally speaking, most contracts on average last 3 years, master agreements we call them. And so you might guess that every 3 years, or whatever the period is, we'll sit down and negotiate the next agreement. But they might be shorter, they might be longer. But, both sides come and, with their lists of wants and needs or what have you, and you bargain at the table and you negotiate until you come to an agreement that both sides feel like they can accept and are willing to sign on to, and you have a collective bargaining agreement. Well, it can be short, it can be very lengthy. I would, you know, as a general rule, in this case, let's take one of our symphonies for example. Usually we're going to begin to negotiate a contract with them maybe 2 or 3 months before the expiration of the current deal. And we may spend that entire period, you know, with meetings along the way, bargaining sessions, going all the way up to the end of the current contract before we actually reach an agreement. Sometimes it goes a little bit beyond that, or maybe we are able to come to an agreement sooner. I would say typically, usually we reach an agreement toward the end of the one that's currently in place. We had, you know, sometimes people look at relationship between unions and managements as purely adversarial, and of course there's always a naturally, for lack of a better word, adversarial nature, because each side is coming from a slightly different viewpoint. Although in the end, I think we're good for one another, in that we're trying to ultimately achieve the same objective of a good arts organization that treats everybody fairly. But we had a situation with one of our area orchestras, actually, I would say about 20 years ago, where we were first trying to organize this orchestra, and the musicians were seeking help from the union because they didn't feel like they were getting a fair shake with management. And it was difficult at first, but eventually they accepted the idea, and we negotiated a contract, and everything was in place, and for the first few years worked really quite well. In fact, so well that eventually members of at least one member I remember in particular from the board came to us and told us one day that, you know, this was the best thing that ever happened to them, because in fact we had, in a roundabout way, we had forced them to get their act together and get the work done that they needed to, and their product as well as their financial foundation was improving as a result of all of that. So that very positive relationship unfortunately started to unravel a few years down the road as they changed the management team. The executive director they had in place at the time left or was replaced, I don't remember which, and subsequent managements started to view things differently, thinking they could do better without the union, and encouraged the board to get rid of their contract with the union. In the meantime, before it got to that point, we actually had a situation where we felt like, well, we could see where they were beginning to abuse the contract, the terms of the agreement more and more we were having to file grievances. In this one particular instance, they dismissed a musician, we felt like unfairly, in fact for purely political reasons, or what we call dismissal for union activity. The management wouldn't refer it to that. They would have said that the dismissal was for other reasons, you know, a breach of contract on this person's part by creating trouble, if you will. Well, as it turns out, they would not settle with us at when we grieved it and talked to them, so it went to arbitration, in which case an impartial arbitrator was brought in, and this arbitrator ruled in our favor, saying it was clearly a discriminatory situation, and restored this musician to their job. And so had it not been for the union and our collective bargaining agreement, that would not have been possible. Quite simple. In our case, you complete an application and you pay your membership dues. If you're a first-time member, you've never been a member of the Musicians Union anywhere, you have a certain amount in initiation fees that you have to pay, and then you pay dues annually to the local to maintain your membership. FM for about 30 years now, a little over 30 years actually, and I just joined as a rank and file member, a musician. Actually, I was still in college at the time, and I thought that was something I needed to do. I knew I wanted to be a professional musician as a performer, and the people that I knew and respected, the other performers, my teachers, the people I saw out in the workplace, they were all members of the union, so that was good enough for me. As I went on and learned more about the union through my membership, I became more and more convinced that there was a very good reason for it, being a member, and I understood better why I was a member, I guess you should say. I've been involved as an officer in the local since about the last 11 years now. I was the secretary-treasurer until just recently. Now I'm president. So.